watching this. My name is Nathan Bartolomeo, and this is the first and pilot episode of the Generalist and Specialist podcast. So, what's this podcast about? It's a podcast basically for creatives that are students or 9 to 5 workers. Yes, I think those two majorly. But basically, what we'll be focusing on is balancing creative growth and your daily your daily life, right? Because I realized a lot of people have other activities that kind of affect and trump on their creative journey. If you understand what I'm saying. An example would be a student, right? That probably needs to study and is trying to balance between the average school life, which is going to school, learning, coming back from classes, then having study sessions and all those busy days, but still has that interest, that passion to be a creative, basically, right? So we are just going to be touching on how on what are the steps or what are the things such a person can implement that will help their creative journey, right? That would be of benefit. Yeah, that would be of benefit while they are growing in their creative journey, right? So, on today's episode, we'll be talking about identity. And I strongly believe that creative identity is one of the first and most important aspects of a creative journey. It's the baseline, basically. It's the structure for everything. You need to know what you what specific area of creativity, right, you are going to be involved in, your creative interest, what's how, and it helps you lead down to how you are going to delve in to become a better creative in that field. Simply means you have to define your creative journey, and the way to define your creative journey is by first of all identifying or creating your creative identity, right? Creative identity is more than just taking a step and also choosing a particular niche, right? It's also going deeper into it, is also letting people identify you, right, with that particular creative niche, with that particular basically with that identity as a creative, right? So an average person should know, if you're a graphic designer, let's say you're a social media graphic designer, an average person should know that, okay, if I call Nathan Bartolome, which is my full name, right? I'm giving an example. If I call Nathan, right, or the moment I mention the name Nathan, the first thing that should come to my mind is, oh, he's a social media designer. Oh, he's a social media manager. Oh, he's a community manager, right? It's letting people know, or letting people connect you basically with what you do. I was attended a branding class few months back. Okay. I think more than a year now. And the first thing the person said was that thing. The moment you take a soda, let's use a soda as an example, right? The moment you take a soda, right, and it is kind of, what's the color of Coca-Cola? It's kind of black in color, right? The first thing that comes to your mind is Coca-Cola, because they already sold their identity around that particular color of drink. Okay. For some other people, maybe another name, but the most common name that will come to mind is Coca-Cola. And when you see like an orange, okay, like a, will I say a golden orange, kind of thick orange color, right? A thick orange juice, right? One of the first name that might likely come to your mind is Fanta. You understand? Branding or identity is how people use in classifying you when you are not in the room, right? Or it's the first thing that comes to mind when people mention your name, right? So I had this friend of mine that reached out to me that learned graphic design over I think a year ago, and then his first complaint was that, oh, he was a graphic designer, but he wasn't exactly getting any design gig. And I realized that, okay, there's this whole idea that there are lots of graphic designers, right? And the field might be, sorry, the field might sort of be overpacked with creatives. In as much as that could be right, I'm not saying that it's a wrong idea. I'm not saying it's wrong. What I'm saying is that it also helps you if you are in a position where people already know that that is what you are doing. For this particular friend of mine, right, people didn't know he was a graphic designer. I'd even forgotten he was a graphic designer. I The reason why I remembered he was a graphic designer was because he I was learning video editing at that time when he was learning graphic design. So we happened to be like in the same code but learning different skills. So I just remembered, oh, this guy learns graphic design. But basically he had not established an identity as a graphic designer. I don't know if he was designing for his church, if he was designing for different organizations, but here's what I did when I was going to start my own graphics journey, right? Which is how I started out basically. I sort of was a designer in my church where I was, right? And yeah, basically it was, I think basically that was the only skill, but that was the only place I could use the skill because I was learning, right? So it gave me opportunity to learn, right? And then it also gave me the opportunity to have something I could put up in case people were like, oh, I want to see your designs, things and things like that, right? So it helped out a lot. Then eventually I volunteered, yes, for a non-government organization, right, an NGO, right, that was building at the time, right. Then I came on board as their graphic designer, right. I think that was when I had my first professional experience outside of the church, and then from then on, I think I've grown. Yeah, it helped me. It even helped me track my growth, right. One of the things about putting yourself out there is that it helps you track your growth because now that you are visible, you are accountable to others, right? It's it's sort of like seeking attention, but not seeking attention like that. But basically, putting yourself out there, right, and being loud about what you do, right, being the first name that comes to people's mind when they think of this particular skill, right? It helps you, right? Because I strongly don't believe that a creative should complain about being broke if you are not out there. Okay, if you are out there already and then the gigs are not coming in, that is one issue, right? That's just one issue that maybe you're then we can begin to look at other aspects of what you are doing wrong or what you are not doing or what you should do better. But then if nobody knows who you are, nobody knows what you do as a creative, and then you complain that you are broke, then you are you are your first problem, right? You are your first problem. So identity is like the structure base of every creative entity. And one thing I've learned over the years, and is my advice to many creatives, especially those that are starting, right, is that you stick with one identity or you stick with one craft when basing your identity. Now, I'm not saying that you should not be a multi creative. No, no, no. I'm not saying that. I have so many creative skills. But when choosing a creative identity, right, sometimes they get to be misunderstandings, right? So if you do not define that identity well, people will misread you. And here's a good example. My life is a good example, actually. I used to do a little bit of photography. I say a little bit of photography. I wasn't that all good at it. Then I used to do social media management. When I first started off, social media management and writing was my strongest suit, right? Then I began to learn graphics, right? So my friends kind of knew me as an all-round creative, right? But I had this issue for years because I was like, okay, what do I showcase on my social media page? Am I a graphic designer? At the point, I kept graphic designer slash community manager slash social media manager slash writer. All of it, I was just listing everything on my Instagram bio just so that when people come to the page, they can they have an idea of what I do. The problem with that people quickly forgot what I did, and here is why. If I needed a graphic designer, the first thing that comes to my mind is the person that is just a graphic designer. When you have, I think they call it a slash something slash occupation or slash niche, right? When you have multiple niche, right? Slash something. I would look for the name and then I will drop it in the comment section, right? But the problem is that people only refer jobs to you or come to you with gigs when you become a backup option, right? So if the person that has identified himself as a graphic designer becomes faulty or is not available to carry out the tasks, maybe is kind of busy with something, you're only referred to as a backup because, oh, this person also does this thing. Right, so that's when they reach out to you. So aside that, you are nobody's first choice. You're more like a second or third option. Basically, that's the disadvantage of having slash professions, which is being a multi-creative. And I saw something recently, or a few months back, rather, and it was something I almost did. It was a creative that had multiple Instagram accounts for multiple skills. Now, I considered that while I was trying to choose my own creative identity, but it was exhausting. I'm the type of person that finds it difficult to be consistent in social media. I think it's one of the reasons why I left social media management all through, right? I didn't find it exciting as graphics was. I'm not shading social media managers. Social media managers are really good, but I just didn't find it. That's a personal level, right? But one thing I realized was that if I was going to do a good creative identity, right? If I was going to be really good at, or if I was going to be, if my creative identity was going to be not confusing, that's the word, not confusing to people that will be coming to my page, it simply means that I would have to open several Instagram accounts for several skills I was doing. And to be very honest, I didn't think I had that type of patience. I didn't think I had that type of time. Another thing with being a slash creative or multi creative is that in a way it slows your growth. Now, I'm not saying it slows your growth as in a bad way. What I'm saying is that it takes about maybe 6 months to 1 year, right, to build an identity as a creative, right? So imagine you are learning, which is a very, I think nowadays people can learn their creative skills while building their creative identity, and it's amazing, right? It speeds up the growth process of a creative. But imagine you are learning three different creative skills at the same time, right? So you have three different accounts, so you have to look for sort of a way to balance it. And in my own definition, there's no balance until you can designate responsibilities to others. So basically, you have to look for a way to focus at three different times for the three different creative skills. So while you are learning design right? And then you are correcting design mistakes, you are posting the process. You have to do that for three other or two other skills, and that whole process is stressful. Ah, I can tell you from experience, it's stressful. I At a point I was learning social media management rather, community management. Okay, we can let's and graphic design and kind of photography together. And I realized something. What I realized was that I was doing the sort of learning a bit, and I easily got tired and frustrated because it felt like I was not doing anything right. It was very difficult to track my growth. Doing one creative skill alone, it's difficult to track your growth sometimes, or it takes a long while before you are able to track your growth. So imagine doing three at the same time. So I was doing three, and there was I didn't have a portfolio for any of it because creating a portfolio was going to be stressful, right? Learning the three at the same time was going to be stressful because I didn't have a well scheduled well scheduled plan. Yes, that was one of the things I actually lacked while I was learning the three at the same time. And it was just so overwhelming at a point I just had to just give up on it. My advice is, if you're the type of person that knows how to critically plan, as in you are a very, very good planner, then it's my workout for you. But if you're a type of person that struggles with planning, as in what I mean by that is you have a to-do list and you are strict with your to-do list, right? You are the type of person that is very strict with your to-do list. It can work out for you. But if you're the type of person that is spontaneous, so if you're the type of person that is spontaneous in their to-do list, it most likely would affect you, right? And you will struggle with